Hello, hockey humans of the world, and welcome to Tough Call Podcast for the 2025-2026 season. Now, as most of my listeners already know, normally I would cover on ice incidents, including big hits, controversial calls, any play reviews, not only from the NHL, but from the PWHL and also across various leagues where incidents might come up. But because there's no play yet, there's no actual incidents to discuss on the ice, so I'll be talking about a few things off the ice. The Mitch Marner era in Toronto is over, and apparently the split was not necessarily completely amicable. I'll give my thoughts on that, as well as Maple Leafs culture in general. I'll also touch on a few differences between United States minor hockey rules versus Hockey Canada hockey rules in minor hockey. And possibly also some of the PWHF rules that I like as well. And I'll suggest a couple of rules of my own. As always, once I get into breaking plays down, if you want more in depth of a breakdown of the plays that I talk about here, any incidents or any questionable calls, or for even more hits, check out the Tough Call YouTube channel. Some of you are watching this episode on that channel right now, in which case I thank you. And please make sure you're subscribed. And if you're not already subscribed, definitely subscribe now. You can also follow me on most social media platforms, including at Tough Call Pod on X and Bluesky, the Tough Call Facebook page, at Tough Call Podcast on Instagram, and at Tough_Call on TikTok. And as part of my rebranding for this season, there's very exciting Tough Call news to announce. The rebrand, you'll see a different look, a different feel to my videos. And I'll be posting a lot more content on social media, more short content, more reels, more clips. I also want to make it clear I don't just talk about dirty plays or controversial plays or things that are wrong. I like to promote what's right about the game. So a lot of clean checks, a lot of good physicality on my channel as well and on my social media accounts. So please, if you like hockey and you like good quality hitting, high impact hockey, then please, that's where you're going to find it here, not just the bad stuff. Also, as part of my rebrand, I'd like to thank my son, Everett, who has made that theme song for me, that little riff that you heard in the intro. He wrote that. And he posts a lot of metal content on his Instagram, EB_100 on Instagram. Go follow him there if you like metal music and you want to see clips of a young up and coming guitarist. And again, thanks for him. And that's the theme song you'll hear for the rest of the season and maybe a couple other little riffs as the year goes on throughout the podcast. With that, let's get into the first topic. Mitch Marner talks about having full-time security pretty much at your house for 2 weeks after the playoffs just to make sure no one's coming to your house. Obviously, he's got a bit of security concerns. Now, he is a Vegas Golden Knight, and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for the Leafs remains to be seen. Spoiler alert, I think it's a good thing for both him personally and for the Leafs as a franchise. Not because I think Marner was hurting the franchise in any way, but I think he just needs to get out. I don't think he was going to be able to do what Toronto fans needed him to do. And I think it's time everybody came to terms with that and let him be. And that's the thing is, can we let players in Toronto be? Now, you know, a lot of people don't believe Mitch Marner, but we're going to look at this in two ways: the specific incident of Mitch Marner, and then secondly, the overall picture of playing as a Maple Leaf in Toronto. Now, in the case of Mitch Marner, of course, yeah, like I said, a lot of people don't believe him. There's always the rebuttal of Nylander rides the subway and he's fine and whatever. I think that can be true for other players. I don't think Mitch Marner is making this up entirely. I think it's possible that this is his truth. It doesn't matter that other players, like, say, Matthew Nyes, have come out saying, I love the staff there, love the players. We get treated phenomenally. It's just a great spot for me. I want to be a Leaf for good. He calls it home. He calls Toronto home. He feels welcome there. He feels good about the future. I think that can be true for a lot of players. That doesn't necessarily mean that just because some players feel safe, or maybe even the majority of players feel safe, and maybe the organization in general does do a good job of protecting players and helping them out and making them feel supported. That can all be true, and it can still be true that Mitch Marner himself didn't feel safe. That's all that matters. Mitch Marner didn't want this for him or his family. He's not saying no one should play in Toronto. He's not saying that players who think the city is fine are lying. He's not saying that the organization who says we treat players well are lying. So why does everyone feel the need to attack Mitch Marner so much? When he's not attacking other people, he's not really attacking the organization as far as telling no one should be happy there. He's just saying he wasn't happy there, period. And that's all that matters. These players are human. They have lives. They need to make what's the best choice for them. I think ultimately it's great that the organization is treating Matthew Nyes the way they are because I think that's where they should invest their future. I think players like him for the Leafs are the future and where they should be going. I think he represents everything that they should be trying to identify themselves with. So I'm glad they're treating him that way because that's what they should be doing for their young up and coming players. Ask him how he's going to feel in 4 to 5 years when he's at the same point as Mitch Marner is in his career, maybe 7, 8 years down the road, he feels the same way about Toronto that Mitch Marner does. That remains to be seen. But right now, he loves it, and I think that's great for the organization and for Matthew Nyes. But I don't think that negates anything that Mitch Marner says. And from someone looking at it from the outside, I think you're kind of proving this point by dumping on Marner so much. And I've had this discussion with a lot of people this summer, this offseason. It's been a really big topic for us as far as what do the Leafs have to do? Because enough is enough, right? It's about time that somebody figured out what to do with the Leafs organization. So everyone is talking about it. And the ultimate decision that a lot of people come to on their own, it's not like it's suggested to them. We've all just sort of naturally drawn the same conclusion that would you take if you take the players that are in the Toronto franchise right now, if you take the same roster, the same lineup, the same management, the same everything, and move it to any other city, do they have success? Do they finally win? And I think that there's a legitimate case to be had there. Um, a, a lot of this is, of course, fueled by the media. We pile on Toronto because Toronto is stuffed down our throats. There's a reason that TSN is nicknamed the Toronto Sports Network. There's a reason that the Too Many Men podcast has a weekly segment called "How Does This Affect the Leafs?" Because that's what all anyone in the Toronto media wants to talk about is Leafs this, Leafs that. I mean, just look at the McDavid to the Leafs rumors flying around now. Just because he won't sign an extension in Edmonton, of course, that means he wants to be a Maple Leaf, right? Why? Because someone talked about him a couple of times saying we'd love to have McDavid here. Of course they would. If that's all it takes, then my local U15 AA team is also linked to Connor McDavid. I mean, who hasn't said at one point in their lives that they'd like a player like Connor McDavid, or they'd love to have Connor McDavid specifically? So I think the media kind of shoots themselves in the foot here by stuffing Maple Leafs down people's throats. That's for sure. But there is something to be said for the culture there and the vibe that they give off. And to me, um, it as someone watching the playoffs, especially as an Oilers fan, we finally got Jack Michaels and Louis DeBrusque to be on the call. We had our local announcer, Jack Michaels, finally do a Stanley Cup playoff run for us, which was phenomenal. Now, he is definitely over the top. I mean, I could read the dictionary and he could commentate me reading the dictionary and make it sound exciting. He has this knack of making everything sound exciting and positive, like anything can happen. But to me, that's better than what Leafs announcers do. They seem to bring everybody down and put this sense of despair and panic into everybody. And I really noticed that when after the Leafs lost in the second round to the Panthers. And by the way, that game 5 and game 7 in Toronto were the worst. Get that game 7 was the worst hockey game I've seen at literally any level. Like there was no passion, no fire. There was nothing in that building in that game. I'm not blaming the fans. I'm not blaming the players. I think everybody wanted it. I don't blame the players one bit. I think they had a phenomenal season. They played great in the playoffs. Um, there was just something deflating about the environment in Toronto that made that game very, very dull. And then once they were out and we had to take the broadcasters from that Toronto team because they're the national broadcasters, so they were doing the last 2 rounds of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I found there was this sense of dread, this sense of despair and panic. And it was through I don't know how to describe it other than I didn't feel good as a fan watching the game the way I did when Jack Michaels was calling it, because I just felt like there was this sort of defeatist, waiting for something bad to happen attitude. And I don't blame anyone who watches Toronto for any length of time feeling that way, but are you sort of causing that by having that mental approach to the way they play the game? And is there something in the Toronto culture that causes that? I think there's a pretty good case to be made there that the city of Toronto expects to win. They have unrealistic expectations about winning all through. Now, I think the current formation of the roster, I think they should win. I think they have the team now that should be winning, and I don't know why they aren't. The only explanation I have is that it's not always the players' fault, and they have had teams in the past that have had the capacity to win, and for some reason they don't. And I think it's time to really take a deep look from outside and take yourself out of the Toronto-ness that is the Maple Leafs and just think about what's going on within. And I've constantly said, don't blow it up. They're so close. They're so close. But I just think there's something bigger there now. I think it's undeniable to say that there's something about the energy around that team that is doomed to fail at this point. And I think something's got to give. I really believe that that roster and the personnel they have and everything, the philosophy, the vibe they have, I really think that they would win if they were anywhere else, and they should win in Toronto, and they can't seem to do it there. So something does have to give there. That's just my personal opinion. Um, Now, speaking of success in Canadian markets, this is the worst segue ever, but I'm just going with it. Uh, the difference between USA hockey and Hockey Canada rules at the minor hockey level caused a lot of debate on my Facebook feed this summer and throughout developmental conversations. We had that great Four Nations face off between the USA and Canada. Hype hasn't really been high for the Olympics in a long time the way it is right now because of that tournament. So the question is at the minor hockey level, who's playing real hockey right now, Canada or the US? There's a lot talked about in terms of people trying to soften the game, removing hitting, removing fighting, whatever you want to call it. People love their violence. To me, checking done the right way will cause violence, and playing the game the right way will cause violence. It's organic because of the speed of the game. It doesn't have to be manufactured with elbows and greaseball tactics. And I think both Hockey Canada and USA Hockey are doing a great job of getting rid of that at the game at the grassroots level, so players coming up have a different idea of what physicality and violence is in hockey. um, Having said that, there are a couple of differences in the rule that have nothing to do with violence. Um, One of the rules in Hockey USA, and correct me if I'm wrong out there, if you're officials and all that, about ages and all that, but um, there is a rule where if you're shorthanded in minor hockey in the United States, you're not allowed to ice the puck. It's treated like an icing in any other situation. So when you clear the puck down the ice, whistles blown, face off in your end. There's no advantage to being on the penalty kill by being able to break the rule of icing all of a sudden for 2 minutes. And I know a lot of Canadian teams went down there this summer, played in tournaments, and there was Facebook complaints and people arguing about this rule. I This is one rule where I don't have a problem with. I don't see how it hurts players to have to hang on to the puck longer, to learn how to buy themselves time and space, and also the idea of a soft dump out. Like it's not like you're not allowed to dump the puck or clear it out of your zone. It's not like you just have to skate around with it until you're taken down and turn the puck over. You can clear the puck out, but you just now need to have a touch. You need to have a finesse, and I think that's a very useful skill for any situation. When it's late in the game and you're up by a goal, you're trying to kill time. You don't want to ice the puck then either, right? So you do a soft dump, or as an offensive strategy, you learn how to time it and put the right weight on the puck so that it lands at a specific spot on the ice and one of your players can streak and intentionally go for it. And I think that's a legitimate move to do shorthanded. I wish more teams would be a little more offensively aggressive shorthanded, and this rule is going to encourage that. It's going to encourage more skill. It's going to encourage learning how to use your body to shield the puck, to protect the puck, to buy yourself time and space. So the, to me, it's way better of a skill to learn and develop than it is to just shoot the puck down the ice. Uh, I don't see any negatives to this rule whatsoever. And a lot of people look at it, well, like now you're being penalized twice because you have to serve a penalty. You're already short a man, and now you can't ice the puck either. But I don't look at it that way. I look like you're finally being penalized the right way. All of a sudden, you're not allowed to break a second rule just because you broke one rule already. That's the way you should look at it. You're not being penalized twice. You're finally just suffering the punishment you should have suffered all along. So to me, I think it's more in line with what I'd like to see of a real hockey to not be able to ice the puck shorthanded. So that's one rule. Um, Another rule that's different is in the United States, they don't have a delayed offside for up to a certain age. There's just automatic blown down. You don't have a chance to clear the zone by yourself time. To me, I got to give the nod to Hockey Canada on that one for creating the delayed offside. I remember growing up as a player, they didn't have the delayed offside, and it just slowed the game down astronomically. It was so boring, whistle after whistle after whistle, especially as players are learning the rule. It just happens too much, slows the game down. It's just such a detriment to the flow of play and just kills it, in my opinion. So I think it's been better for the game to have the delayed offside rule. That's one that I'm going to give the nod to Hockey Canada for sticking with that one. Whereas Hockey USA, for up to a certain point, has the no delayed icing or no delayed offside, just automatic. Slows the game down too much, affects the flow of play. It doesn't stop you developmentally from learning the rule either way. So I feel like it's better to have the delay offside just for the pace of play and the fun entertainment value aspect. Um, Now, as far as contact goes, the rules for contact are very different. They're not different in the way they're called necessarily, except for one fundamental difference. Hockey USA has done a very, very good job in the rule book of getting people to understand what the primary purpose of body contact in hockey is. The primary focus of a body check must be an attempt to gain possession of the puck. Proper body checking technique starts with stick on puck. Therefore, the stick blade of the player delivering the check must be below the knees. That right there, that definition being in the rule book, just speaks absolute volumes about where Hockey USA wants to go with contact. Hockey Canada wants to go the same way, just not to the same extent. And it's not so precisely or clearly worded in their rule book. So people are wondering where they get the idea that proper body checking technique starts with stick on puck. Well, that's what the checking clinics are teaching players. That is what they're learning when they are being trained on how to implement body contact into their game. You are taught to go stick on puck first. And in order for stick on puck to happen, where does your stick have to be? It has to be on the ice. And that is one thing that Hockey USA really digs down on. Your stick actually has to be below the knees, according to the rule book, while you're delivering a body check. And if it's above the knees, it's an illegal check. I think that is a fantastic way to break the rule down for up and coming players developing so that they get in the habit of keeping everything down, including their stick. Whereas Hockey Canada isn't so strict on stick location. You can pull your stick out of the way, even if it's up, as long as it's out of the way and not part of contact, then it's okay. And I don't necessarily see that that's a problem. You can certainly legally throw body checks with your stick in any location. Sometimes it's just better to just get it out of the way completely, no matter where it is. But if you're looking at what the true purpose of body contact is, the true purpose of body contact is, in fact, to gain possession of the puck or to put yourself in the best position to get the puck. So all elements of body contact should be puck focused. And in order to be truly focused on the puck and do it right, your stick should be down on the ice. Um, and you could say that's just personal opinion. It's not, because angling, steering a player, taking away their space, closing the gap control, all these terms, all these things you're teaching players that have nothing to do with actually physically finishing a check, those are the things that lead up to body contact. Um, a lot of those things can happen, and in fact, you can get the puck or strip your opponent of the puck without actually having to contact their body or quote unquote deliver a body check, because you've done all the other steps properly. The body check is just the ultimate finish of the process of doing all those other things. So it is important to keep that stick down when you're doing actual true purpose body contact. And I think Hockey USA does a great job on really clearing that up in the rule book. Like I said, Hockey Canada wants that to be the case. They call it that way. The spirit of the rule is the same in both countries. I just like the way this is written better. Um, so I think it's a bit of a tie in terms of the spirit of the rule, but the written word is a little bit better in Hockey USA. One place that does it really, really well, as far as the purpose of body contact, is the PWHL. In their rule book, it says body checking shall be penalized for an illegal hit when the result is that a player makes deliberate contact with an opponent with opposite directional force, when a player leaves their skating lane to make contact, or when a player extends an arm, shoulder, or hip after angling an opponent. And I want to make very clear that the Hockey USA, Hockey Canada rule books also deal with these things. Um, if you leave your skating lane to make contact when the player isn't eligible to be contacted, it's interference. When you extend an arm, shoulder, or hip, or leg, or what have you, after angling an opponent, and you're going to miss and you extend your body in some unnatural way, you're going to get called for tripping, holding, roughing, kneeing, what have you. These things are covered. But this rule, the way it is written, is just so succinct. It just makes perfect sense. You understand exactly what not to do. And more importantly, it's really a good message for what to do. Why is there body contact in the PWHL? And I know some of you are saying, I didn't even know there was body contact in the PWHL. But yes, there is. You are allowed to have body contact. They just want it to have a hockey purpose, which is really the whole point, isn't it? So they talk about opposite directional contact in this case. And I think that is brilliant because what they're talking about is north south contact, two players going opposite directions coming at each other. And that is easily, in my opinion, the most dangerous type of contact there can be in hockey. Even when it's done cleanly, it's just so forceful because of the speed of the game when you're going opposite directions that obviously the brain is going to slosh around. You can easily get concussed without head contact. I'm not saying you should eliminate north south contact to an extent because it is possible to do it legally. But what really a true body check taught in the checking clinic material for both Hockey USA and Hockey Canada, there's nothing north south about it. It's all about north north or same directional contact. And even when two players are coming together, it's really important that the player delivering the check do something to turn an angle at the last second. You're supposed to adjust and make it an angle to soften the impact. You're not supposed to just steamroll and go straight through a player head on. It's just not what hockey contact is designed to do. There's no purpose for that, and it's very, very difficult to do it legally that way. So really, this rule just sums it up. Like you're not allowed to hit a player with opposite directional force. You need to find some way to take an angle, which is exactly what you're supposed to do anyway. Take an angle, go stick on puck, keep everything low. And ultimately, instead of you running into a player and steamrolling them, what you're trying to do is put yourself with good body positioning in a place where they run into you and they basically just check themselves. That's what a true body check is. You shouldn't have to do anything to increase or unnecessarily uh, increase the force to manufacture force for a body check. Once you start to do that, that's when you get into the extension and the explosions upward and the reaching out and the driving and the jumping and all that because you're trying to unnecessarily increase the force of that body checking. So this rule basically spells out that anytime you manufacture force, it's illegal, which should be the case in any league, and it kind of is the case in any league. It's just not called as strictly as it should be, and it's not as clearly, succinctly defined as this rule right here. I think this is absolutely perfect, and they should be proud of themselves for this rule. Whew. Um, Speaking of the PWHL rulebook, there is another rule that I really, really like in the PWHL, which is the jailbreak rule, which is when you're shorthanded. If you score a shorthanded goal, then your player gets to come out of the box. I really, really like that rule. It's actually happened quite a number of times in the PWHL, and it's a lot of fun. It puts a lot of pressure on the power play to keep possession, and it gives an incentive for the penalty kill to be more aggressive, which is what I said should happen anyway, and what the Hockey USA rule for no icing uh, encourages. And now here we have a league that encourages that even further by saying, you know what, if you do score a goal, now you're not shorthanded anymore. So I think it just comes full circle. I think it's a fantastic idea. Something else the PWHL does that is super fun is the top team in the playoffs gets to pick their opponent in the first round out of the teams that are eligible to be an opponent for them. That is crazy to me, the concept of picking your opponent. I love it. it's crazy. Like it's so crazy that it works, and it has happened. And the team that gets picked has that extra motivation and has in fact upset the number one team in a couple of cases. It just creates that element of rivalry that isn't necessarily there when you have a top team facing a weaker team, for lack of a better word. Now they only have six teams, and they have four make the playoffs, so it's a little different. It might be harder for that rule to be put in place when the league starts to get too big. But for now, I love the rule. I love what it does for their league. It adds that little bit of flavor to their playoffs, an element that other leagues obviously don't have. And that's the thing. I don't want any other league to do this. I want this to be a PWHL thing. I think this should be their own little special niche, unique thing that they have, that little bit of PWHL flavor. And it does add a bit of excitement to their playoffs. Absolutely love it. I love the innovation in the PWHL. I think maybe they should leave it like it is for now. There's talk of other rules because they're having a little fun with it. They're being experimental. I don't think they should experiment too much. I think they're doing just the right amount now. Leave it as is, until your league and your brand develop. But A1 stuff. I love the playoffs in the PWHL, partly because of that rule. Um, Now, I have my own rules that I would like to see out there, and I'll just leave it at one rule for now because we're getting a little tight for time. But the main rule I'd like to see is when a team in the lead near the end of a game takes a penalty with less than 2 minutes remaining in the game should extend so that the team that earns the power play gets the full 2 minutes to try and tie the game up. I think this should happen at the end of every period as well. If you get a penalty with less than 2 minutes remaining in any period, then the team that is receiving the power play should have the option of getting the full 2 minutes and having that period extended till the full 2 minutes, or having the option of having the power play start at the start of the next period with fresh ice and a face-off in the offensive zone, the way they would have earned had they not asked to have it starting in the next period. And then at the end of the game, if you're down and you take a penalty with less than 2 minutes, I don't think the game should extend in that sense, because then you just take penalty after penalty to try and extend the game and give yourself a chance to tie it. So that would defeat the purpose of this rule, which is teams that are in the lead taking penalties intentionally to negate a good scoring chance, knowing that they only have to serve 10 seconds or whatever it is of the penalty. And that has happened. Don't tell me it hasn't happened, because it has. I can give you one specific example right now, just off the top of my head. Connor Garland and Connor McDavid. And he legitimately said openly in the press conference after, I thought that was the best way for my team to have the best chance to win the game was to eliminate their top player and go 4-on-4. And Connor Garland held Connor McDavid for a good 20 some seconds. I have a video of it on my YouTube channel. It was ridiculous, the number of things that happened in that 20 seconds. And of course, McDavid fights back, cross checks him, and then he gets punished. When this player is saying legitimately, it was my strategy to basically commit illegal offenses, and the league isn't calling it. Why? Because what's the point? There's only 20 seconds left. So it would negate that. And now people are saying, well, refs would be hesitant to make calls late in the game because it has such an impact. I think that ship has sailed. I think officials have already put the whistle away enough in the third period, especially late in the third period and overtime and stuff. I don't think this is going to create any more putting the whistles away that already exists out there. And I think it would be better for the game to, have more skill at the end of the game rather than just muggings, because it doesn't matter. I don't see any downside to this rule that I'm aware of. There's been no point brought to me right now where I'm saying, you know what, that's a legitimate point. I never thought of that. If you have one, I'd love to hear it, but I haven't heard any reason why this is a bad idea yet. That's one rule that I would really like to see implemented. I've talked about it for years, and I just would love to see one league try it just to see how it goes. I think it would be great for the game. I think it would cause a little bit more interest in some of these late games, and you'll see a lot less frustrated players, I believe. Okay, let's leave it at that. That'll be the end of the first episode of Tough Call Podcast for the 2025-2026 season. Make sure you look for me on social media channels. Follow my YouTube channel. Subscribe right now. And hopefully I'll see you next week.